Singapore. Apart from this advisory work you're doing for the banks in China, what else are you involved in?
Here in Singapore, we actually get involved a lot from our out-tasking service part of the company, where we'll actually manage projects on behalf of our clients. What we're finding is smaller independent clients are utilizing us because they don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the resources, and they don't want to divert their resources onto a temporary undertaking like a project. So they'll engage us to plan and execute their projects, and because of the Singapore is well known for its shipyards here and its capabilities, a lot of the projects get executed here in Singapore. So one project we're working on at the moment is for global tender barges. They're moving into the area. They're a new sort of startup business down here in Southeast Asia, and they've hired us to manage one of their projects here in Keppel.
How big is this project?
The project's it's a repair and reactivation of a drilling tender barge, and the project worth is in the region of $40 to $50 million.
US dollars.
US dollars.
Right. And this is going to be used for what purpose?
The barge itself is an offshore tender barge, so it would go alongside a platform, erect a drilling rig, and then drill well construction type modes.
Right. Let's talk about Houston, since that's your headquarters. What are you busy with in Houston?
In Houston, we're actually busy advising a number of clients in terms of feasibility and definition and concept of projects. With Houston being a sort of the main global oil and gas hub, a lot of the decisions surrounding projects are made in Houston. So most of our work in Houston is at the front end of the projects.
The Gulf of Mexico would obviously be one of your big hunting grounds.
Gulf of Mexico, South America and Brazil, that kind of area there. Interestingly enough, we have some work going on in Alaska as well. So which is an interesting development that's just happened this year. So that's some interesting work up there. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely growing, and we're very excited about the American market.
You mentioned Alaska. What about the Arctic Circle? Let's talk about the Arctic melting and exploration activities could be launched in due course.
Yeah, the working in harsher environments up there is always interesting from a project perspective. There are a number of I suppose interesting projects going on around the world where ice. Are you
doing anything on the Arctic Circle? Are you doing anything on the Arctic Circle?
No, not currently, except for Alaska at the moment. But nothing currently in the Arctic Circle.
Right. What about Brazil?
Yeah, Brazil's an interesting market. We worked there on a project a couple of years ago, and we're just working on the planning of another project down there in Rio currently. It's a huge growth potential. Petrobras at the moment are hoovering up drilling rigs, or at least it seems to be. They're placing large contracts with long-term contracts with drilling contractors. Which is interesting and good for us, because obviously the drilling contractor then has to meet that demand, and which normally means the lead on to constructing more drilling rigs and upgrading more of them and that sort of thing. Right.
The Middle East.
Yes.
How busy are you in the Middle East?
In the Middle East, well, it's a startup business for us in the Middle East. The reason we're in Abu Dhabi and not Dubai is because Abu Dhabi has the oil in the Emirates, and we're using that to target everywhere from northern, Egypt, North Africa, and looking at Baku, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, from the Middle Eastern hub. So early days there, but it's going very well.
Central Asia. These days, a lot of news coming out from Central Asia. Is that a dangerous place for you to operate in now?
In terms of the Georgia incident,
and the pipeline getting shut down.
The pipeline being shut down. Well, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have been a sort of well-trodden project route for us. We've undertaken a lot of consultancy work in that particular region of the world. I don't think that the recent incident in Georgia will substantially impact what we're doing, at least in that area. From a project risk profile, of course, it's a new heightened consideration for us when we're looking at those type of risks on projects.
Right. Okay. Talk about Ghana. Lots of good things happening in Ghana at the moment, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. Ghana has discovered oil in fairly large quantities, and they're looking to develop their infrastructure in terms of being able to exploit those reserves.
So, how are you involved in Ghana?
In Ghana, well, we have a business in Ghana. We moved into Ghana off the back of a project last year into Tema and Takoradi, the two main ports of Ghana, and we maintain operation there. The last project to be delivered out of Ghana that we were involved in was in March time this year. So we're in between projects in Ghana at the moment, but we're watching the market. Interestingly enough, a lot of companies, supply chain companies and oil field support companies are contacting us because obviously we have a lot of local knowledge in terms of the infrastructure, the available workforce, this kind of thing, what's available in country. So they're asking a lot of advice from us in terms of their own business setup down there.
This is not necessarily oil, right? You did some port work as well.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we were looking into down there was the feasibility of expansion of the port, looking at increased dry dock facilities in the area. West Africa suffers from availability of that type of service for vessels, and certainly for specialist vessels that are used in oil field development. So we were looking at all those feasibilities down there at the time.
How advanced now are they in developing the port?
Well, the port is still under development, if you like. And they're pressing ahead with some plans at the moment, I'm sure.
You mentioned earlier that Singapore has got some involvement in
Yes, the interesting thing is there's an economic development board tie-up between Singapore and Ghana, the two countries, and Singaporean workers don't require visas to go and work in Ghana, and the opportunity that we looked at and used was bringing in expertise from Singapore into Ghana to help. Obviously, because of the expertise and the experience here from the shipyard work in Singapore was very useful to us on our projects down in Ghana. What to deal with escalating costs on projects?
At the way that things are going.
Yeah, well, there are a number of ways. Obviously, changing contract strategy. It falls down really on what the defined driver for the project is, the overall driver. For example, how important is it that whatever it is we're building actually gets to the market on those dates? So if that's the case, then a lot of the time the client companies will accept the increased costs in order to meet that date and get a return on their investment. One of the main ways of reducing costs on a project, of course, is time. If you allow more time, then you can often reduce a lot of your cost. And obviously, one needs to look at the assurance aspects of the project, to make sure that, if you're paying an increased cost for something, you're actually getting the service that you expect, you're getting it on time and within the parameters that you've defined. So where we've seen a growth in services and in consulting services is very much in that risk aspect, risk management aspect, and the project assurance aspect from a global perspective.